Now we're going to look at Form 2 that we will go through on day 2 in our in-person work, which is the Strategize a Strategy form. So what I've done is I've taken the standard that we used in Form 1. However, there's an opportunity, let's say if in your formative strategy that you're presenting here, that you either want to focus in on one and an item called for multiple alignments, or if you want to draw your attention on several performance expectations here to have more of a topic-centered discussion with your strategies. Please note that for this purpose on the standard does not have to necessarily match exactly what you put in for Form 1, and that's why we've duplicated it to this section for Form 2. For this item that we're looking at, I'm going to call on formative strategy, student constructed rubrics. There's going to be no need for me to supply additional information about this because in our formative strategy picker in the Teacher Learning Hub, I've already provided a correctly sourced details about this formative strategy. So there's information in there, so I would just navigate to look it up under S. Here's an example of the student constructor response as a submission. The OPI will be able to extract this information into a CSV file at the end of our work. As I mentioned, Form 2 is really kind of the heart and center of all of this work we're doing, because we really want to make sure that these materials are not only meaningful but also usable to teachers. And so we need to make sure that in describing these steps that they have all of the information they would need in order to successfully engage with these materials with their students. So for number 4, it's name the steps the teacher takes in order to introduce this formative assessment or activity to students. And so this is actually the teacher instruction. So for this one, it would be having students read that passage. So I'll pull up the item again. They need to read the passage, and then for this specific one, all of the questions that are given, or as I mentioned on Form 1, I'm just doing a standalone item. So we're just going to give this item. So first have students read the passage. After students have read the ultimate medicine passage, then the teacher needs to have them take the constructed response item. That information is also in this student constructed rubrics within our glossary, but we do need to be specific here. So this one I'm just going to specify. They're just taking this one constructed response item. And then what are the steps that the students are taking in order to provide information either to themselves or the teacher about their understanding. So what steps are the students going to take to either provide themselves with information or the teacher about their understanding for the different jobs for different cells item? Here, they're going to take the constructed response item, and after they've taken the item, this is where we get into that formative strategy. And then as a class, we're going to have a discussion about using this constructed response item to build our own rubric. And so for illustrative's sake, we're going to say it's a 3-part constructor response, and so it's going to have complete, partial, and incomplete with no option for 0, but feel free to make constructed rubrics however you want with your students. And I'm not going to provide all the details about this formative strategy because again, it's in our glossary on the Teacher Learning Hub. Here we would say they take the constructed response item, go through the classroom discussion. After they've gone through the discussion and building the evidence a student needs to have in order to have a complete response, have a partial response, and have no credit given to them. Then we're going to go down to the role of feedback. So in this part, they're building kind of collaboratively what the rubric would look like in order to score or assess their performance. And so this actually has multiple ways you can do feedback, but for this example, let's just say it's process feedback. So first, the students are assessing their knowledge by taking the item. The next level is that they are building an understanding of what evidence for each level of the rubric is in order to have complete, partial, or no credit. And then the final layer of this formative strategy is that the items are given, the teacher gives the items back to the student and has them use that complete rubric that was built by the class to grade themselves. So there's kind of multiple layers to this activity. After we've filled in the information here, and again, we would want it to be a little more complete and written in a much more grammatically correct way, because our plan is to take this form and just extract the information at the end of our 3 days so that we can get these ready for online dissemination in a much faster manner. So there will be a level of review at the OPI, not only to make sure they're included in the repository using the review rubric, but also just to make sure that they are well written and articulate and descriptive enough for teachers to use with their students. So the next level of this is list any student skills that were reinforced with this activity. And so in addition to kind of the constructing explanation practice, we're also having collaboration. So some 21st century skills are being called out here, and then any extra embedded curricular goals or connections. Well, this passage is really kind of relevant and engaging, and so you might want to put in some information there, whether or not you're getting into bioengineering. And then the steps the teacher takes to close the activity. And so as you have the students grading themselves using that rubric, kind of walk through and around the class to see how well they're interpreting the evidence that was constructed as a group with their own response, and kind of provide any feedback to help them grade their own performance. Another thing you could do is, based on kind of that discussion, if there was any things that you notice about applying evidence, you could really call those out. So what does it mean? How do you know? Those kind of questions. Or you could end it with an ethics kind of conversation about bioengineering and the information that was described in this passage. So I'm just going to say passage here for the sake of this video, and then as we can see, there's no supplemental information that I'm including here or comments. So since there's no red text, I don't even need to supply anything. So that concludes where you can pull information up from the hub for the formative strategy, how you can use the item, and how you need to respond to each of these elements. And I would strongly suggest save frequently, just so you don't lose any of your work. And so that concludes how to fill out and use the resources for Form 2 that we will go over on day 2 of our in-person work.